Every January, the WWE runs a yearly event where they stick 30 chisel behemoths onto a square of canvas and insist that they throw each other off this canvas until there's only one of them left. Doesn't seem like a good way to handle employee relations, but it's the WWE, it's a bit different, isn't it? Now, I could say that these events are historical recreations of the Black Friday sales from the previous November, but I'm not that sort of person that can deliver a decent comedy device so effectively. After all, not one of these people would have been out in November wearing just their pants, I hope. The yearly event was first held in 1988, and it was devised by long-term WWE staffer and the first ever Intercontinental Champion, Pat Patterson. It was a variation of the classical Battle Royale, very famous across many wrestling promotions. But while that match starts with all the participants in the ring, the Royal Rumble sees all the participants draw numbers to see what order they will come out in 2-minute intervals. The participants squabble about a bit and then they get eliminated by being thrown over the top rope, and they have to, this is an important rule, have both feet touch the floor. At the end, the winner is crowned, and ever since 1993, that victor has been awarded the chance to be in a championship match at the year's biggest event in the world of wrestling, Wrestlemania. As all but the king of the Wally men know, the WWF is staged, and everything here is carefully managed from the order of eliminations to the entry lottery itself. This creates a string of exciting events and chances for unseen matchups to occur, and it's also the start of many storylines that will build for months to WrestleMania and maybe even beyond. It's a brilliant device for the WWE to throw loads of storylines all out at once, and it makes for a very exciting event, and certainly is my favourite couple of hours in the wrestling programming year. Royal Rumble for the Sega Megadrive and Super Nintendo was only the second time that the event had appeared in a video game, after my personal favourite of all time, WWF Wrestlefest by Technos for the arcades. The game was released by Acclaim, who held the home console rights since the NES days. Those titles aren't great, so it doesn't bode too well for this game, and some of those were made by industry darlings Rare. Oh my word. My bum hole is quivering in fear. This game was developed by Sculptured Software, who through their various iterations have made a lot of wrestling game series, along with the home conversions of the Mortal Kombat games, early Simpsons titles, and the Super Star Wars trilogy games for the Super Nintendo. Their first Genesis and Super Nintendo wrestling title, Super Wrestlemania, released in 1992, was pretty damn average. The approach they went for was a realistic one, and the method of presentation compared to the brilliant excess of Technos titles like WrestleFest and Superstars gives the game a bit of a hollow feel. The Hulkamania era was one of the more exciting in all time of wrestling, and it was all about the glitz and glamour. And Super WrestleMania felt like a punch-up between a couple of drunk farmers at a remote rural road at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday morning in comparison. To make matters worse, the entire roster had the same exact moveset. So, what of its sequel released the following year? The one we're discussing today, kids. Royal Rumble was released in 1993. The Super Nintendo version came out first in June, with the Mega Drive version some 3 months later. Both versions of the game played very similarly, with only the roster being different. Both versions feature Neon Gorilla and Rambling Madman Macho Man Randy Savage, Slim Mulleted Man About Town Shawn Michaels, Greasy Tooth-Picked Enthusiast Razor Ramon, John Crease-Faced Ball of Brawn Lex Luger, Human Fruit Salad Sweet Crush, NES Action Platformer Protagonist Bret Hart, and finally Undead Zombie Man The Undertaker, who amazingly is still wrestling and competing some 27 years on. Good lord. Give it a rest, man. Put your feet up. Exclusive on the Super Nintendo, we have the gum-chewing, supremely confident Mr. Perfect, alleged Native American Tatanka, fake Noel Edmonds lookalike Ted DiBiase, tyrant of food Yokozuna, and not Jimmy Savile, thank God, Ric Flair obligatory woo. Woo! On the Sega Mega Drive, we have the Plank's best friend, Jim Duggan, the Lost Businessman IRS, handsome Mr. McPerfect Teeth Rick Martel, somebody's been watching Roger Moore's Bond movies, Papa Shango, and finally, sex tape racist Thunder Feltram himself, Hulk Hogan. Let me tell you something, brother. So how does Royal Rumble the game do? Well, steps have been taken to perhaps give it a little bit of the atmosphere that Super WrestleMania lacked. The ability to cheat helps, for instance. The ref can be knocked out, eyes can be raked and necks throttled when he's not looking, a chair can be wrapped around a head or two. And while these movesets remain identical for all grapplers, they have at least been given their finishing moves. But make no mistake, these characters are identical other than that. Yokozuna, the size of a bus in real life, is the same height and size as scrawny people like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, albeit with a slight beer belly. You get the intro music for each wrestler, with the Super Nintendo giving you the full-on mid-90s MIDI Casio keyboard versions of Ric Flair and Randy Savage's classical themes, for instance. And then you get the Mega Drive doing its usual angry cyborg B playing the harmonica thing that only people like Yozo Koshiro could figure out how to use effectively. Other than that, the atmosphere issues aren't really fixed. The limitations of the hardware mean that commentary would be hard to impossible, but using music like the Technos titles might have been wise. Instead, we get the white noise of the crowd and the same 2 or 3 grunts and groans repeated, like you're watching the voiceover for a gay porno. There are several modes allowing you to compete for the singles and tag team belts, compete in a brawl and a triple tag bout. Then we have the eponymous Royal Rumble, and it's a closer representation of the event than Wrestlefest. Rather than the hilarious stack 'em up bundle pins of Wrestlefest, the only way to eliminate opponents in this is to hoik 'em out by their pants. Off you fudge, sir. And an excellent representation of the official rules that is too. The gameplay relies on a tug-of-war system, which sees you bash the button that you want to use to throw them over, and your opponent doing the same back. In one player, depending on the difficulty level, this is fine. However, against a human opponent, if you've got a similar tapping speed, then you can be in these grapples for some time, which doesn't make for brilliant gameplay. So, overall, the lack of atmosphere really does hurt it, and in my opinion it's something Sculptured Software never got in either the following games from this, the WWF Attitude Era games, the ECW games, or the Legends of Wrestling games they did after those. Reviews? Well, Me Machines liked it, calling it a big improvement on the original, which to be fair it was, and they gave the Mega Drive version an 85%. EGM helpfully informs us that the wrestling isn't real, thanks guys, but the game sure is fun. They give the game a solid 7 out of 10, which, in my opinion, is about right. Sculptured Software would follow it up with those titles I've mentioned before, and would continue to do so even after they became a part of Acclaim Studios, with Acclaim Studios Salt Lake City being their name. So that's that. Very disappointing for me at the time, as I was wanting a home version of Wrestlefest that never came, but this was the nearest I could get. Well, that's that then. The rumbliest royal since the Duke of Edinburgh roll, which is 4x4. Next time out, we're going to go back into Spectrum Land for more nostalgic TV show adaptions. But it's fun to change it up a bit now and then, isn't it? Okay, thanks, bye!